Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. I hope you're all well who's watching. I'm joined by my co-host, John. How are you, John?
I'm good, mate. Good.
That's great to have you back on. And also a special guest, a radio personality, game master, host, a media personality, Dominik Diamond. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Stephen. I'm good. Hi, John.
Hi, Donny. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I've made it. I did say on Twitter that I was rushing back to my house in Calgary to make this on time. And it's weird because the way it's lunchtime, and you can tell that because I've got the sun streaming right onto my baldy napper if I kind of go like that. And it's like a sauna in here just now, which is bizarre because Calgary is the coldest part of the world. That bit north of the wall in Game of Thrones, that was based on Calgary, basically. So, but I'm here and I'm excited at the end of what's been a fantastic week for our club.
100%. And by the way, you're lucky to have the sun, Dominic. It's pissing the rain where I am, so fair play to you. But I mean, before we move into the show, I do want to come to yourself first, Dominic. I mean, we appreciate you coming on, and you've been doing some great stuff, latest with The Guardian, but I know you've got something new coming up, so tell the people what that is, what it involves, what it entails.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for front loading the plug, like right up top. That's good. Some people see I did that Old Firm Facts podcast. That wee shite waits till the end. So fair play. No, in the 90s, I had this kind of famous column, video games column in Games Master magazine called the Big Purple Column. And I'm now 52, so I've got a different version of it. I've just brought it, but it's called the Little Old Purple Column because I'm older now. It's not as big, and so it's like a kind of weekly video games roundup thing. Because when I started writing for The Guardian, I came at it from the point of view of someone who I didn't play a lot of video games the last 10, 20 years because I was hopelessly addicted to FIFA and FIFA alone, and it took over my life. And so my kids were all saying, "Oh, play the Zelda Breath of the Wild." And I'm like, "I can't, I'm about to be in Division 4 rivals." So it was the editor of The Guardian said, "Well, listen, why don't you do a column about you kind of going back and rediscovering these games that your kids like and make it kind of half video games, half parenting teenagers column." And it went down really well. And a lot of people got in touch who used to watch Games Master and said, "Listen, we find the whole video game scene just crazy and confusing these days. We go on to play Call of Duty and it's all so fast and people are swearing at each other and we don't really understand it." So I thought, well, I'll bring a column back, and it's basically me trying to make sense of modern video games for the Games Master generation of the 90s who feel a little bit kind of lost now, and also going back and looking at some of those classic games and everything. And what's great is that I do it through a platform called Substack, which means that as well as writing it, I do an audio version as well. And that's it. And you can just, if you best, just look at my Twitter at Dominik Diamond. There's all sorts of links to it on that.
Yeah, we'll put the links in all in the description. Don't worry. But that sounds absolutely fantastic. I mean, me myself, I probably borderline addicted to FIFA. I do love FIFA, so I do play a bit of Call of Duty, Cold War, I think it is now. They're good games, but sometimes they're a bit up in the air. But I do want to say to everyone who's watched along, thanks for joining. Brian Kelly back in, Paul Dat's back in. He's had a Celtic podcast overload today, which is fantastic. Ryan Kelly again. I mean, Tim Alloy, Jed Thomas. But John, we'll kick this podcast into gear and we'll start talking about, as Dominik said, the club we all love, Celtic Football Club. Big Ange Postecoglou again, sweeping up on the awards. Another Manager of the Month award. I think that's 4 in a row, is it? 3 or 4 in a row? It's just fantastic. About 4 in a row. He'll maybe reach that 10 for us, you never know. But you look at it as John, he's, again, we talk about him every week, but winning awards month in, month out, the pictures behind him with all the different coaching staff, he's just a classy guy, isn't he?
No, he's different, man. I think he's been a breath of fresh air for the club. I think we've been quite stagnant in that area for a number of years. Obviously, having Brendan and then all the troubles with Brendan leaving, Lennon coming back, and everything else. And obviously, we were in a bit of we've spoken about it numerous times. We didn't know where we were really going, and then the whole Eddie Howe saga. But Ange's been an absolute godsend as far as I'm concerned. He's been fantastic, and he's proved it through the results he's got, the club, the position that he's put us in, and then obviously the awards that he's winning and the awards the team's winning. So, he's been absolutely fantastic. Can't speak highly enough.
You can't. He's just been a magician for us, really, like Tom Rogers, the magician Aussie. But Dominic, you look at it as well. I'm going to come at you with like a two-pronged question because I'm quite interested to find out some of your Celtic memories. So, first of all, I want to kind of ask you, what is the memory that stands out for you the most, or the most important season in your Celtic sporting life? And up to now, what has Postecoglou like imprinted on you as a Celtic fan? Has he totally changed your perspective? Because beforehand, we're maybe a bit naive to all these different coaches coming in from foreign lands. We're used to like Gordon Strachan, Neil Lennon come back 2 times. Celtic kind of went out of their comfort zone. They've rung Postecoglou in. He's done fantastically well. But to start back what I said there, like your memories leading up to now, how's it been for you?
I think that because I've been here in Canada now for 13 years. I've only been back once in that time. So I look for memories that make me smile. And I know, like most people would probably pick Seville, and I was at Seville and it was amazing. But I think the time at Ibrox, the game we called the Craig Bellamy Show, when Craig Bellamy absolutely ran them ragged, and we did the bouncy at Ibrox, the Celtic fans at the end, to absolutely get it right up them. And I think that is hilarious because it is an utterly hateful song. And to take a boxing glove and turn it into a bunch of flowers, it's just so good. The best thing you can ever do with all that pish is laugh at it. And we laughed at it at their place. And so that was just such a joyous release. And I can't think about it now without smiling. And we also have, and he won't thank me for mentioning this, there's a mutual friend of ours, very famous Celtic fan in Stranraer called Romano Petrucci, who's responsible for me becoming such a Celtic fan in the first place. But he is very well connected and he's very influential. The last game I went to actually was the first leg of the Champions League playoff against Malmo, right? So that was about how long was that now? 7 years ago?
I would be about 6, 7 years ago. Yeah.
And I remember that. This is what Romano's like. You basically see him at Celtic Park and he's got 20 season books and like runners heading off to all kinds of directions and lounge passes and everything. That's Romano. He's a brilliant guy. But he said, can't remember how many years ago now it was, and he messaged me and my pal Mikey, with 3 of us are best pals, and he's like, listen, I've just heard from a source. They just bet Craig Bellamy. And he said he's coming back to Celtic Park this season. He says he's got unfinished business. So, and I always laugh because he didn't. So every transfer window, we just slaughter the guy on Facebook and everything. We're just like, unfinished business for Bellamy. Finally, here we go. So I always think of Craig Bellamy with a smile. I know that he wasn't there as long as we hoped, but he was such a dazzling, effervescent player. He was just a different class. And I loved him as a player, and he gave us a fantastic memory of that game at Ibrox. And in terms of Ange, oh, sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say Craig Bellamy for me, like he was far better. I remember was signed Henri Camara to replace Henrik Larsson. He was an absolute shambles, and Craig Bellamy came in, and I remember his game against Dundee United where he ripped them apart as well. I agree. I totally agree with you, Dominic. He's a fantastic player. Wish he stayed far longer. Like,
definitely. Yeah, and I think that's also why one of the many reasons I like Ange Postecoglou is that it's beyond doubt that he's an incredible tactician. That whole inverted fullbacks way of playing was just brilliant, and it was the making of Greg Taylor and Anthony Ralston. It really was. Obviously, in the transfer market, there has never been, in my memory, a manager who has brought in so many players to a team in the Scottish top flight, and so many of them have worked. I mean, unbelievable. But more than that, he's a great man, and you say about how he always has the photographs with different back team staff, and that's what Postecoglou's all about. He's a thoroughly decent man, and he's a funny man. He's absolutely hilarious. I mean, he's the funniest manager we've had since Gordon Strachan. The way he treats the media is just. And the thing is, what I like about him is it's deadpan as well. So he gets fired into them, and he leaves them thinking, is he taking the piss out of me or not? And we know, no, he is. But he's got that great Aussie bluff. I mean, I love the guy. I would find it very difficult if I saw him like from 100 yards away. I would find it difficult not to run up and give him the biggest hug in the world. God love him.
Yeah.
One of our contributors, William, he always says he looks like a cuddly big giant. You know what I mean? But 100%, the way he gets on with the Scottish media from day one. Do you remember when the interview came out? I think we lost 2 games in a row, and I can't remember who the reporter, I think maybe McIntyre or whoever, he was like, I think that's a catastrophe or the season's done. And he goes, not a catastrophe, mate, it's not over. And he came back to the point like a couple months later and he was like, I thought you said it was over. So he remembers all these things, and he's so like good with the media, he bounces off them as well. And sometimes I think the media appreciate that in some kind of weird way, instead of having the single-minded managers all the time giving the same answers. Postecoglou's does fantastic for that. And can also point as well, Dominic, you've got some support in the chat at the minute. Red Scotland is like, is that Dominik Diamond? Yes, it is Red Scotland, 100%. Ryan Kelly used to watch your show, Paul, that as well. And then can Dominic keep that energy up for a full RGO, Patrick says. I think he can. I'm led to believe you've got a sandwich there to keep your energy up, don't you?
Because it's lunchtime and I've been out all morning. My wife brought me a sandwich just before we went live. So I might stick a wee bit now and again. There we go.
You fire on. You get that in there, get it in there. But see as well, you made a great point as well, Dominic, and I think it's a cracker, John, that as most of his signings will have come in, bar a couple, have worked out fantastically well. One of them players is Matt O'Reilly, who was just awarded with a Player of the Month award. He's come in from MK Dons in January. The first couple of games he was fantastic. Obviously, he tailed off a bit, but he's back on the form, getting them assists and passing. He's full of energy. He's like Tom Ruddick, similar way, just a younger version, as William would say. I know he's watched along, but again, 1.5 million. Matt O'Reilly, fantastic bit of business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, like Dominic says, we've never seen a manager come in and with such a turnaround in players and them all be so successful. I mean, a couple maybe not getting a game, Scales maybe not as much, McCarthy maybe not as much, but everybody that generally has come in has played a very important role this season. And O'Reilly is just one of them, and he's shown how good he is. And the fact that, I mean, he's only been here a short number of months, and you imagine that if he what he could possibly do for us with a full season under his belt, he's definitely going to be in that. I said this earlier. I mean, even with how good he's been, even though he's not been here for a full season, he's been pushing at that sort of Player of the Year because he's been instrumental in a lot of the stuff we've done. And like you mentioned, that obviously he's got similarities with Rogic, but he's a lot younger. And we've discussed that we don't like the two of them in the same team, but what it does do is it offers another option. You can rotate these guys, you can move them about, and it's fantastic. And as I said, we've got another window coming up, and we've had a full season under our belt, so it's like very, very exciting to see what Andrew's going to do for next year and see how we're going to improve again further still.
I think to add to what John said there, I think what's interesting is the two boys that you mentioned who haven't been getting the regular games, Scales and McCarthy, they're arguably the only ones that people had heard about, with the exception of Joe Hart. You know, that's the other great thing about Ange. He's brought in players that we didn't know anything about, and for them to be so good, you know, we're more used to with Celtic with, you know, and I hate to even mention his name because there's a tweet that was bookmarked by every single fan of the other club after Shane Duffy's first game for Celtic, where I said, the final piece of the jigsaw that will get us the 10. So,
no.
We're so used to having players, you know, that disappoint, to actually get these players that we didn't even know. And we know that people had pelters with them, and, you know, no one below this height's going to make it in the Scottish League. And all these guys that everybody laughed at as being unknowns have all been brilliant. And it's only really, I mean, Scales was obviously linked with Celtic for about 50 years before he came. But, you know, him and McCarthy are the ones. I think Scales is a good player. I think there's an argument to say that we should have had him on the subs bench to fill that left back berth when we've been found wanting, you know, a couple of times recently. And McCarthy is just, you know, I don't know. McCarthy, it might just have been that thing. We've just got him a year too late, you know.
McCarthy, it's a strange signing for me. A 4-year deal at 31, injury prone, played about 2 games in 4 years for Everton, whoever he was at. It's a bit of a weird signing. But just to come back into there, I mean, speaking about Matt O'Reilly, before there's a more pressing issue in the chat here. I hope you answer this question, Dominic. What's on the sandwich?
Well, I've got to be very quiet because 2 of my daughters are vegans, and so I'm not allowed to have meat in the house. But there's a cheeky little packet of roast beef right at the back corner of the fridge. So I've got my wife's got me roast beef and cheddar and some cucumber, and some kind of lubricant. I think it looks like mayonnaise. I hope it's mayonnaise. So yes, that's it's a good question. And to the guy who asked that, because that's exactly the kind of thing I'd be thinking as well. Is what's in the sandwich? So good for him.
But we're speaking about signings there. Obviously, the sandwich came up there, but Red Skull makes a great point. I don't know if you've across this, Dominic. The new chief of recruitment, head of recruitment's been appointed, Mark Law. He's coming in to work with Postecoglou. He's worked with him before, previous clubs. We had quite an in-depth discussion on our previous podcast. But in terms of, obviously, you speak about Matt O'Reilly, you see 1.5 million, a fantastic signing. Kyogo coming in from Japan, Hatate, all the rest. You can round them off here for days. But you look ahead to the summer, it looks like Celtic are already putting the building blocks in place, doesn't it? A bit more forward planning instead of reactive. And they're just making signings, as you said, like Duffy, for the sake of it.
Yeah, no, I know, and it's good to see them making moves with Jota and CCV already, because that would be better. I would rather both those bits of business done than any player I can think of that we need that's been linked with the club. I would think if we get those two in, especially Cameron Carter-Vickers, because I was trying to think actually when I was rushing back down here in the car. What was the last time that I liked a centre-back at Celtic as much as Cameron Carter-Vickers? And it's probably Boyata. It was the last kind of one I can think of that I felt, you know what I mean? This guy's a genuine talent. I mean, CCV, completely different type of player because he is just like, he's a wall. You just can't get past him at all. And he's got that knack that Christopher Julian had, if we're ever going to see him again, that he can score a goal as well, CCV. So he would be the number one single most important bit of business for Celtic. Jota would be great. Obviously, insanely skilled guy. Some of the balls that he takes and kills with one touch, I just defy. I mean, Rogic is the only other player in the team who can kill a ball like that. I should not, to be fair, Matt Riley can as well. But Jota had that little dip. But what I liked, though, was just as the snipers were getting on his back, he came in and the performance last weekend was absolutely fantastic. Really, really, really.
He did. You're 100% right to point out the fact he did go off the boil, but I think you make a great point, and he came back with a bang. I think it was 3 assists and 1 goal in 4 games, and it's just fantastic, isn't it? And I mean, again, William comes in here about your sandwich again. Classic roast beef and cheddar go together like Halmack and a tate. We're here to talk about Celtic, not that like sandwich. But we'll move on from the monthly awards, and we'll look ahead, John, to what could be potentially wrapping up the league title. Paradise tomorrow, 12 o'clock kickoff, isn't it? Isn't it 12? Aye.
Something like that. Yes, I believe so.
5 a.m. over here. Let me check. Yeah, 5
a.m. That's some grafting. You're getting up to watch that at 5 a.m.
Horrible. Yeah. Let me just check.
It is 12.
5 a.m. 5 a.m. Yes.
But we look at that game. You look back at the season like we always do, and we didn't think we'd be here, but we're ready to wrap up the title. I think it's going to be a cracking game tomorrow. Robbie Nielsen's done a good job. Obviously, they're guaranteed European football in group stage, which is good for Scottish football and the coefficient and stuff. But get into this game, potentially wrapping up the league title. It's just, as Dominic said when he first came on, it's been a fantastic week for the football club.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to listen. We've been knowing now for a number of weeks that the league was. I think most people would be in agreement that the league was ours. Obviously, the game last weekend, if they had maybe won that kind of puts a wee bit more pressure on us. But I think ultimately we still believe that would be enough about us to see the rest of the games out and win the league. But the fact that we got the draw, we didn't drop any points, and everything remained the same going into this game. Now I think that the team know what this means, because if we wrap this up, then I think Rangers have got 2 games to make up 20 odd goals, and we need to lose the next 2, which I can't see happening either. So I think this is pretty much just wrapping everything up, putting a bow on it, and I'm confident it'll be a tough game, but I'm confident we're going to win it.
Yeah, I think with that goal difference, it depends, because they've still got to play Hearts, so it depends how many goals that Hearts let them get. I could see Hearts going, letting them get up to 18, 19, you know what I mean, just for the wind-up.
But as you said, when you first come on, Dom, it's been a fantastic week, both as a football club. You got to sell your car, you're sitting with a sandwich, we're talking about Celtic. It's fantastic. We're looking ahead tomorrow. Do you think it's just party mode until now, until the end of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, after the game last weekend. And I have to say that, I mean, Matt O'Reilly's been absolutely brilliant and he deserves all the accolades. But Joe Hart, I know we love him, but he's not picked up one single award or nomination at all, I don't think, this year. And I think that last weekend just showed how important he was. That save, that one-handed save, at a time when they were battering us. And I mean, I was sitting over here, and I think because it was like 5 a.m. kickoff and I was a bit sleep deprived and hungover, but I was giggling like a madman at every chance that they messed up in the last 20 minutes, because I remember being on the other side of that so many times, and I thought they'll be absolutely raging. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to make them rage, does it? Get a number wrong, and but I just thought that they must. Joe Hart's almost like become, what like McGregor is to us in terms of saves already. And I think what I love about Joe Hart as well, that he has got the club and he has got the fans from day one. He has so many lovely wee posts on social networking and everything. You can just tell he gets the club and he loves it. And this is a guy as well. This is the kind of older player that you want to sign for your club, as a guy who's got a point to prove, a guy who was treated appallingly at his previous club, a guy who's been told, no, you're done, you're over. And he gets a chance to come to the biggest club in the world and win a league title. And I think no one deserves that more than Joe Hart. That's brilliant.
He's fantastic. And I think Brown Warrior comes in with a great point here, Dominic. They put the anger in Rangers.
You missed the asterisk.
But see, to come back at you, we had a wee podcast about the Player of the Year awards and stuff, and it'll be interesting to hear your point there, because you mentioned Joe Hart. I think it's a fantastic shout as well. Was there anything you would change from that? I mean, Cal McGregor got Player of the Year, Abada got Young Player of the Year. Any shouts from yourself? Who do you think should be up there?
Well, people who follow me on Twitter will know that I have an absolute ridiculous love and obsession with the god that is Anthony Ralston. And so for me, he gets man of the match for games that he doesn't even play in. I think he's just he's like an almost mythical figure hewn from rock. I think but I think, joking aside, I think if Ralston had carried on getting the games that he had at the start of the season, I think I tweeted right at the beginning, like after the first 8 games, Ralston's going to get Player of the Year in Scotland. But then Juranovic came in, and Juranovic obviously is incredible on that right hand side. I wish that Ralston, had learned to play left back, or even I have this thought that I think Ralston could even be a defensive mid kind of player. But like realistically, Kyogo, if he had been fit, I think would have walked away with it as well. But Kalmack has got it because he's been there, he's not been injured, he's not taken any breaks, and the way he has captained that side has been absolutely incredible and defied what I thought he would be like, because he always seemed like one of the quieter members of the team. And for you couldn't get 2 more different personalities than him and Bruni, but he's just flourished. He's blossomed. And I notice in his post-match interviews, he uses 10 times better words now than he does, and he looks away less. You know that footballer thing they do where they look at the side of the camera or look down, right? Kalmack looks right into the camera sometimes now. He breaks the 4th wall. So I think he has absolutely bloomed as a captain and as a figure. And as a player, he's just, I can't think of a match I've watched and I've thought Kalmack's playing pish. I can't think of one. I know.
He's fantastic. Just Mr. Consistent. 8, 9 out of 10 every week. He captains the team. He loves the team. And what I loved as well, when we got beaten in the semi-final, Dominic, he brought the team together at the end of that match, and he talked to them, told them to get through it, and they bounced back, and we're winning the league now. We'll have the double in the bag. But a quick fire one to you both. I'll start with yourself, John, first. Does Chris Boyd win Fanny of the Year?
Fanny of the decade, I think.
You second that one, Dominic?
Listen, I think that I was just really pleased that, you remember Jim Henson, right? That before he died, he had all the leftover bits of the Muppets, and he made one last one called Chris Boyd. And I think that was a great gift of him. I think that years from now, people will look back and we'll try and describe Chris Boyd, and people will think we're making him up. They'll be like, no, there can't be someone who's so stupid, who's allowed to actually talk for a career and be stupid. And actually, I think that in some ways, that I think every home should have a Chris Boyd. We obviously shouldn't be broadcasting, but every home should have a Chris Boyd sitting in the corner so that when we go through dark times, like we have done with COVID and global supply chain issues and rising food prices, you've got a wee Chris Boyd in the corner. You can just say, "Hi, Boydie, say something stupid to make us laugh." And then it's like, "Oh, yeah," and everybody's got the wee portable Chris Boyd in the corner. But he's absolutely off the scale. Stupid.
It's crazy. I love the wee Twitter going around now. Remember when Ramsey signed for Rangers, he was giving it the Shay Given on the side, and Aaron Ramsey's getting tossed to the side and after costing him millions and millions of pounds. But just want to say the interaction in the chat again is fantastic. Alistair Jack and DS1 said Chris Boyd cuts his sandwiches into 4. There's another sandwich plug for yourself, Dominic. This is mental. David Ferguson, fantastic point. Calmac shite bag, shout the bar stakes, earning player of the year on its own.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And I just want to say, even the McGranda, Lawrence Tomlinson, who's always watching along as always, fantastic to have you watching as well. But we'll move on.
Can I just say, because that reminds me, the only other person that could have matched Calmac really for Celtic Player of the Year was Barisic. Actually, so he's got to feel a little bit unlucky that he didn't win the Celtic Player of the Year because he should have stepped back hard, didn't he?
I mean, Jan had done the same thing to him that Abad had done. How can that happen twice? Do you know what I mean? It's insane. And they're in the Europa League final. But less said about that, the better. But look, John, we'll move on to what the league win brings, and that's the Champions League, the group stage, right? And we're talking about realistic games for European football, and it's a hot topic now among supporters, especially we can't ignore it after what happened yesterday evening. Our main rivals have won in the Europa League final. Fair enough, but what does that mean for Celtic going forward? I know James P did an article today saying we can't base on the Celtic blog, another shout out to them, we can't base what they do and compare it with us because that's kind of leading into all sorts of loopholes, blah, blah, blah. But where do you stand on it?
What, on comparing us to them?
No, but do we need to be doing better in European competition?
Of course we do. I mean, for me, winning the league first and foremost should be priority number one. Getting into Europe's obviously fantastic, and making a name for yourself in Europe and getting results in Europe's great. But we should ultimately be looking at the league title first and foremost. For me, though, it's like when you see the success Rangers have had this year, there's a lot of chat about their past maybe being a wee bit easier. The Europa Conference League gets just as good, if no better, teams at the minute. And it's. I mean, I'm trying not to pay too much attention to them and what they're doing, but I mean, it does show you though that the level is the game in Scotland is better than most people make it. And all credit to them, it's like they've obviously done what they needed to do to get to where they are. But it does sort of show that Celtic need to show, because we've had the better of them for the majority of this season, and it shows that if they can do it, why can't we? So I think that us making a name for ourselves in Europe. It should be something we should be looking to do. Again, it shouldn't be a priority, but we should strengthen in areas to make us at least compete to a level. And I think that this Ange is the man to do it as well. If we're going to have a resurgence in Europe, because we've not had it for a wee while now, Ange is certainly the guy who's going to do it. If you look back earlier in this season when we were in the Europa League, we got beat, right? But we still finished the group stages with more points than Rangers. We had a tougher group. We were playing against tougher teams, and even though that was the case, we did get beat in a few of the games. We didn't qualify ultimately, but we still had a respectable points haul. And we still gave these teams a game, regardless of what the scoreline was. They knew, or watching us knew, we're not going to sit back like we used to do in Europe against some of these teams, like under a Lennon or a Strachan, and you saw us kind of sit back and show them a wee bit too much respect, I think. But Ange just is like, well, we shouldn't fear anybody. And I think that now that we've had a season under our belt, if you were to put us in that same group now, I think that we would qualify. That would be entirely different, and I think we'd be in a much better space. So knowing we're going into this next season with a full season under our belt, another window for Ange to strengthen in certain areas that we need to strengthen in, because I still think there's a couple of positions that we could do with that. I've full confidence that he's going to have us competing against some of the best teams in Europe. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I wasn't comparing, Dominic. I was just looking at the situation that they find themselves in compared to us. We're the best side in the league. We're winning the league. That always points to it. We're consistent throughout the season. The best team. The table doesn't lie. I think when the Tim here brings up a cracking point, Dominic, I worry our attacking style might not hold up well in the Champions League, especially if the team isn't improved in certain areas, which John alluded to. Where's your thinking on the whole European scale for Celtic?
Do you know and I don't want people to think I'm just saying this because of certain clubs being in European finals, but honestly, these days and for many years, I couldn't give two shits about Europe. I don't care about European football for Celtic at all. And I think that's me being selfish because I'm over here in Canada, so I don't get to the games. If you'd asked me during Martin O'Neill's era when I was going off to Barcelona and Milan and Seville and that with a wife, it'd be different. But I can't even see them on Celtic TV, the European games. So the league has been just all-conquering, obviously, as we were trying to get the 10. But even now, I think the league was more important this season because we wanted to show that last season was an aberration. Whether you want to call it the COVID championship, the behind closed doors or what. I mean, it was such an aberration for that same team of players to lose a league by 25 points. It's mad. It wouldn't be believable if it was a Marvel movie plot. So I think it was important to show that was a fluke, that was an aberration. So the league was all important this year. I think that Ange didn't even have half the team that he wanted for our European campaign this year. And you saw how much the team improved after that winter transfer window, that it's going to be, even if we didn't buy another single player, it'll be a different story next year. But we're not going to win a European trophy, right? We're not going to win a European trophy. I would rather win the league. Same as John says, that's going to be the absolute, I would say, the league's #1 priority, and a treble is far more important than any European trophy. We're not going to win the Champions League. We've been to the final of the UEFA Cup, Europa League, call it what you like. We've been there, we've done that, and we didn't smash the place up. So let's see what happens, in a few weeks' time. So yeah, I'm not that bothered about Europe. I'm honestly not.
Do you not think, though? I do get what you're saying, right? But for me, it's like a burning kind of thing. For me, I look at certain clubs, right? They're doing well, less of the budget we're on. They can kind of qualify for tournaments, get far on it, and it's not even that for me, Dominic. It's what it can bring, the exposure, more money which Celtic need. Obviously, being in a lesser league, we need money to compete for transfers and things. Can you not see that angle of it? If you're coming across, you need to attract better players because let's put it politely, you're not going to get a player just to come to play Scottish football. They're wanting to play on a European level.
No, that's a good point. But I think the reason we see clubs with smaller budgets do better in Europe is that none of us can really know what it's like to play at Celtic Park on a European night. We know for the fans, it's amazing. Even before the disco lights, the sound and everything like that. But maybe it's absolutely keep your pants terrifying as a player. Maybe the reason that smaller clubs with smaller budgets do better in Europe is that the players don't feel this kind of horrific pressure that Celtic do with the legacy of the Lisbon Lions and everything like that. Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense why we haven't done better, but
it doesn't.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, it's difficult. We've still got, even if we went on transfer wise and brought in your Joe Harts, your players that are deemed to be, too old for other leagues, more than capable of Scotland, and we should have the best conveyor belt of young talent, and we do have the best conveyor belt of young talent in Scotland. No one can match it. The problem is that we let them go off to Europe in the last couple of years. But surely, if we shouldn't need a massive amount of transfer spend to win the Scottish League because we've got the youth market completely cornered and we can get the likes of Joe Hart. So I'm not sure that we're needing to get, a 15 million, 20 million pound player, or even a 10 million pound player in these days. I don't think we do.
No, 100% get what you're saying. I mean, for the SPFL, you're right. You're not needing a whole lot to break the bank and go out and buy all these quality players to win it. I'm just coming across the point, John, that if it was seen Postecoglou said it then as a thing with Sky saying players are going to be attracted more to Celtic. We're going to be in the Champions League group stages. We've got that bounty. Dominic makes some great points. I mean, for me, I do care deeply about European football. And I get what you mean. It's from a selfish point of view because you can't attend the games. But what do you think? What's your overriding thought on that? Because I think he brings up some good points.
No, I mean, it's certainly a valid point. I mean, and listen, look, if you look at the old core Rangers, right? They essentially killed themselves pushing to make a name for themselves in Europe, and that's certainly something you don't want this club to do. We don't want to put ourselves in that position or make it difficult and spend needless amounts of money on players to try and do something that, when you're being realistic, I mean, would it be fantastic to get far in the European competition and to win another trophy like a Europa League or a Conference League? Champions League might be a bit of a push, but I mean, of course it would. But I mean, when you think about it, when you're being realistic with the level that we're at and the finances that we're dealing with, then partaking in those competitions is fantastic. And they sort of nights in Europe, as you alluded to, Dominic, maybe you can't attend them, but even they're still fantastic nights for the fans. And we all like to see the big names come to Celtic Park, and you're playing against your your Barcelonas and your AC Milans and that, which we've done many times in the past. But it's certainly, I wouldn't be making it in any way, shape, or form a priority. Absolutely not. It should be, like you said, domestic competition should be bread and butter, number one, and we should be focusing on that first and foremost. And anything that happens out with that in Europe is a bonus. And I definitely don't want to see us spending absolutely needless amounts of money on bringing players in.
I get your point, John. It's amazing, always to see, legends of European football play at Celtic Park. But we're never, ever going to top Ralston versus Neymar. You're never going to top that.
No.
You're never going to top like one of our guys in like what his second or third ever game, like bamming up one of the highest paid players in the world when we're getting humped. Like, that's classic. That's just like brilliant.
I think it was 7-1 or something. He's sitting giving it stacks to Neymar. But
that's when I fell in love with Ralston. That's when I'm like, you're my kind of player. That's brilliant.
He is a warrior. Like he is built like a machine. But Ian McIntosh, Dominic, comes in with a great point, and I'd be interested to hear what you say with this. Love seeing good Europeans at Celtic Park. Obviously, work dictates the schedule I can go to. I've witnessed some memorable nights under the floodlights. What's been some of your memorable games on a European level?
Well, I am going to Barcelona to see us play when John Hartson scored. And the ironic thing about that was it's a great wee story for that night. So the guy that introduced me to Celtic and got me fired up for the club, Romano Petrucci, I hadn't seen him for many years because I was living down in London and I was just like doing TV and partying and doing crazy stuff. And so I hadn't seen him for years and years. And then my wife and I got my wife interested in Celtic, and she started coming to the European nights. Stuttgart was the first game she went. I think it was 3. Was it Stuttgart 3-1? Anyway, but it was funny because she went to she liked the European nights for the whole thing. She never went to an away game at Clyde or Kilmarnock or that. She wasn't interested in that stuff. But so we went to Barcelona, the two of us, and we had a great day on the Ramblers with all the Celtic fans, and we got walked up, got outside the ground, and I looked in my pocket. And I've lost the tickets. I haven't got them. And I'm like, oh no, I've left them back in the hotel. So I said to my wife, it's about 5 minutes to kill. Wait there. And I sprint down. And no word of a lie, there's a priest on the corner of a street and he's holding up 2 tickets. And I'm like, are you kidding? And he turns out and he's like, oh, Dominic, where are you off to in such a rush? You're going the wrong way. I said, I've lost my tickets. And he's like, oh, listen, I've got a couple here. And I'm like, oh, that's amazingly kind of you. He says, kind? He says, I'm asking face price. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, so fair enough, right? So bought the 2 tickets off this priest, went into the ground, and I'm sitting there, and I was bursting for a pee because I was so late I couldn't go for a pee, and I missed the John Hartson goal because I went for a pee, and it's the only time I've ever gone for a pee during an actual match. And I come back and I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's a guy saying, oh my God, this is even worse than you were on Helicopter Sunday. And he saw me running in the night then, and apparently, and it was this guy, Romano Petrucci, who I hadn't seen for about 20 years. And he ended up sitting behind me because I lost tickets. I got them off a priest. And this was the guy that started it all for me. So yeah, that in terms of European nights, yeah, that Barcelona away was absolutely fantastic. I loved that.
That's a weird kind of fate, isn't it? Bumping into him or like off a priest.
That's Celtic, though, isn't it? That's the kind of club Celtic is. There's always people. The
mythical.
Crazy. It is. People got crazy stories about Celtic all the time, like that. It's a magical club.
100%. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I haven't been privileged enough to go to an away European game. I've been to Old Trafford when Celtic's been playing United and stuff. I've been to them games, seen Nakamura free kick and that, and they're all fantastic. The atmosphere at Celtic Park on a European night cannot be matched. But when we kind of move on from ambition, John, we'll go on to the transfers, and Ange Postecoglou said that he's basically confirmed that Jota and CCV are in talks for permanent contracts. I know we've covered it extensively on the podcast, but if we get them tied up, and you did allude to some areas need strengthened, what's the most importance to yourself to be strengthened straight away?
Left back. And again, I know a couple of the guys love Taylor, right? And I get pelters for this all the time. I'm not saying he's a bad player. And I mean, and he's shown, especially in recent weeks, that he's up for it, and he's definitely improving. You can see he's improving. But I think that in terms of when you look at the strength we've got, the players we've got up front, the midfield is absolutely packed full of quality. If you've got, you looking at all areas of the park, the left back is probably the weakest. So that for me, it would be an experienced left back. Should be priority. Maybe another backup keeper, and that's no disrespect again, but a wee bit more competition for Hart. And maybe another striker. But I think that I don't think there's much we need to do. There's just a couple of positions you could maybe strengthen in. But yeah, a priority for me would be left back.
Yeah, and Martin Kay kind of backs up your point here, left back and goalkeeper. And you see this, Dominic, for a lot of the Celtic support, not really pigeonholing Greg Taylor, right? He's become kind of a cult hero figure in our podcast. A lot of people are for him. I'm kind of 50-50. John's against. They all call him Gregory. They'll be laughing at that one. But like you look at it, he has been consistent, fair enough. He played fantastically well in the Glasgow Derby games. He was brilliant, full of energy, marking, coming back when he needed to. Then for the fullback role, as you said, he's coming into that kind of form. But where do you stand in this whole Greg Taylor and strengthening other areas of the squad? What would be your priorities then?
I love Greg Taylor, and I remember that one of the weird things about Celtic Twitter and the connections that you make is that I've ended up like having a wee bit of a Twitter message relationship with Simon Donnelly, and who's a cracking guy, and because he loves his music as well. So we swapped the odd message, and when we signed Greg Taylor, I remember, and he said, because he's obviously close with Jackie Mack, and he's like, no, he said, Jackie Mack says this guy is absolutely phenomenal. He's got everything. He's got absolutely everything. So I've always kind of wanted him to do well. And I think that it's not too dissimilar to Ralston. He's just like a kind of smaller, less kind of crazy version of him. And that he's, I don't mean this as an insult, but good, honest journeyman footballers are the backbone of teams, especially in Scotland. Mm-hmm. And I think he's what Gordon Strachan would go, a right good, honest player. That's that kind of Strachan thing. And his attitude is brilliant. He obviously works hard. He's never. He's not huffy. He's never huffy whenever he's been taken out the team. He's one of those players I really, really want to do well. But you're right. But we do need a backup for him. But who was, and I just had a bit of a brain fart, who was the young guy that we played at left back earlier on this season? And he's now
Montgomery.
Adam Montgomery. This is another great example. So how good could Montgomery have been? Because he was another kid. I thought his attitude was brilliant. He'd come on for 8 minutes. And he'd run about 5 kilometres in those 8 minutes. How good could he have been? How good could a Ben Doak have been for us? That's the thing you've got to think about when you're talking about, spending a lot of money for Jota. It's like, I know Doak was on the other side, but if we're letting kids like that go, who could turn out, to be great, that sticks with me a little bit in my craw.
But see, to be honest, I want to come back to you because me and John have this argument all the time. I think it's very one of the rare occasions where me and John agree. So we always disagree on this kind of thing. But the Celtic Youth Academy do produce cracking players, right? You look at Ben Doak, Leo Hjelde has already made a first team appearance for Leeds. Hepburn and Morrison have left and they've went to Bayern Munich overseas. Do you think that's an issue? Because there is a lot of people saying that there is a pathway. I've had ex-players on who say there is a pathway if you're good enough. Are these players just not good enough, or is it just the players fed up not getting the chances and then they just want to leave? I know they're only 16, 17, but sometimes you have to have a bit of balls about yourself in this game. And if you're going to make it, you have to make these decisions.
Well, I have to say that as a father of a 17-year-old boy, I know that 17-year-old boys can be the biggest arseholes on the planet. And my son's a lovely kid. He's great. He's funny. He's smart. But oh my God, when he takes a mood, he takes a mood. And that's what we have to remember about these guys. And I think there's two types. I think that Hjelde apparently was a little bit of a Billy Big Balls who was like, no, I should be playing more. But, which was, apparently what we Karamoko was like, walking into Neil Lennon's office saying, I should be playing more. He had a point, to be honest. So I think that there's a definite split. that there's that and it's difficult because you can't go from the age of 8 with these kids being told that you're brilliant without getting a bit of an attitude and without being arrogant. And you need that arrogance to be a good player on the pitch when you come in younger. Like Mikey Johnson's a great example. You can tell the difference with him now is that I think the injuries and the fact that a lot of Celtic Park have got on his back with taking the wrong options at times. But when he first came through, he thought he was the dog's bollocks. And that's why he was a good player, because he had that arrogance. But it's such a fine line, isn't it, between being too arrogant. And this is where I think that a player who's a better man manager of people, like Ange compared to Neil Lennon. And Neil Lennon obviously does not handle players well. That's just a fact, right? But Ange does. Ange is their dad, so I can see how he'd be better. But I'm kind of mystified as to why we lost Ben Doak, because he was getting his chances, and then obviously something happened, because then all of a sudden he wasn't, and then he went off to Liverpool. So something is still happening there with these kids, and it might just be that they've got too puffed up with themselves, they've got too arrogant, and also agents as well. You can't, we don't know what's going on with them, and all they're interested in is pounds and shillings,
Yeah, I think Dominic makes a great point, John. We always advocate for the youth, we really do. And most of my players who've come on here, ex-Celtic Youth Academy players who didn't quite make the grade, but they tell you about the ins and outs and what it was like, what the mentality was like. And it's hard to say. Like, Ben Doak was getting his chance, John. Carmel Gundabelli, I know he was injured, but he's come back now. Not really seen much of him. Is it still a concern for yourself that we're losing these youth players?
Yeah, I've touched on this a million times, and I've repeatedly stated that I think that there's certain youth players should be getting more of a chance, especially giving them maybe opportunities in like other. I mean, it's difficult to sort of say because you want to win as much games as you possibly can, and taking players out of rotation to play guys who might not fit into the team or whatever could potentially be at risk of you losing games. So, but I mean, like you said, guys like Karamoko, he's definitely shown, he's proven that he's a talent. He's somebody I've advocated for. He should be somebody that's on the bench regularly. He should be somebody that's definitely playing. I know we've got. You've got Jota and Abada, and you've got Maeda at the minute, who he's sort of your Forrest as well. All these kind of players that can play either side, and he's maybe more versatile than Karamoko is. But Karamoko, I don't think he's really had a proper chance to prove what he's capable of. But with that being said, I still think losing him would be a big issue, because he certainly looks to be somebody who has all the talent in the world, and I'm pretty sure if he's given the run in the right team, which should be us, and it could be us, then he'll prove that.
I'd be interested to see if we do wrap it up against Hearts, what Ange will do with those last couple of dead games, because that was what was so disappointing the end of last season when John Kennedy was in charge and the league was done, and we were still playing the same team that lost the league, and we had all these young guys on the bench, and that was just, what are you doing? And especially Kennedy, this is your audition to be manager. Have a gamble. Do you know what I mean? Try something, be imaginative. And I look now at, you look at the youth team, and Adam Moffat, that guy's banging them in for fun. Rocco Vata, Brooks, I would love to see them get a chance. And forget this stuff, we'll have them on the bench for the last half hour. If we've won the league, get them on from the start. Get 90 minutes in them to see how they do,
Rocco Fada's causing big waves over in Ireland, like where I'm from. He's scoring goals for the Republic team, left, right, and centre. He's banging them in for the B team. I think he's only 16. He's went up a couple of age levels to play for the B team, and albeit Tommy McIntyre seems like a look of him. He's been involved in first team training. And Brown Warrior come in here, Dominic, and I bring this back to yourself. I think it's just in regards to, you said Neil Lennon couldn't manage the players. That was very evident towards the end of his tenure. Brown Warrior says Neil Lennon is the man who delivered 5 out of the 9. And last 16 in the Champions League, hope Ange delivers as much. What's your kind of response to that? Because it's not really criticising Neil Lennon as a person. It's just the end of his tenure for me. Yeah. It was gone. It was totally done. And it kind of left a bad taste in some mouths, didn't it?
I think that, obviously, I don't know Neil personally, but I think that he was a different person at the end of his tenure than he was at the beginning. And he was my favourite player. Apart from Henrik of that era, he was the guy whose name I had on my shirts every single season was always Lennon, and I loved him to bits. I almost met him in a pizza place in Glasgow, and I was too nervous to go up and talk to him, but I loved him because he was the only person that at the time that the Old Co fans hated more than me. So I liked every time I saw him, I'd be like, oh great, you'll get battered before me, so that's brilliant. But I think Neil had a tough time as a human and as a man, and there was that horrible video that got posted of him, when he had a few drinks and everything. And but I think I look at video as someone who's who's been an addict. I'm not saying Neil's an addict, but as someone who's got a family that's struggled with drink and everything like that. There was things I saw and behaviour, and I thought, you know what? I think something has changed him as a human being, and whether it was the pressure or just finally after just the unrelenting sick waves of hate, that man, I mean, getting bullets sent to him and everything, that eventually it takes its toll. I started drinking and doing drugs in the 90s because I couldn't cope with the fame that I had been recognised for Games Master. I can't even imagine the kind of pressure that you're under as a Celtic manager to face that hate in Glasgow every single day. But I just felt there was just something about Neil, his attitude in press conferences, and there was a difference. He shut down. There was something that was, and I felt like saying to him, Neil, seriously, go and see a therapist or something. Go and see someone, and I think that there was something there, and I think it'll, maybe it'll come out one day. But I don't think he was well. I don't think he was doing great, and I think that's what it is. So it's not that I denigrate at all his achievements for Celtic as a player or a manager, and I'm incredibly grateful for them. But it doesn't hide the fact that last season was a catastrophic breakdown.
Yeah, I think as well, we all second this. We all second for this. No Celtic manager has ever went through the stuff and we all agree. We all agree with that. Brown Moore, fantastic manager he was in his time. Just unfortunately the last bit. And just a quick one here for you, Dominic. Again, Jed wants to know, you going to the Celtic convention in Vegas?
No, I'm not going to the Celtic convention in Vegas. I tend to get into trouble when I go to Vegas because it's not far. It's only about like an hour and a half. From where I'm in Calgary, and we did this radio contest when I worked for Jack FM in Calgary called 24 Hours in Vegas, and we had a whole load of winners. We should have known it was not going to work out well, because to win the contest every week I would say, I want your best stories about something you did to screw with your neighbour, or funniest story about stealing something, or funniest stories about setting stuff on fire. Right, so it was all about, we're going to go there 24 hours, and we didn't get hotels. It was like, we're going to be up for 24 hours and then back. And then we all nearly got banned from WestJet who fly there, because, as you would expect, after 24 hours, there's listeners going on to the plane, like with half-open bottles of vodka that they're drinking from. One guy sparked up a cigarette, and I'm supposed to be nominally in charge of these guys, and they're all kind of on the plane surrounded by good, decent people. So yeah, I have a slight problem with Vegas, that I can't behave myself. And there's a really boring answer as well. It's that there's a chance we might be moving back to the UK in a couple of months as well. So it's all a bit chaotic with us just now.
See, that's a good thing. Jed asked you a simple question, you explained it. Brilliant, Dominic. But we'll move on to the Hearts game. We always do this, Dominic, the kind of score and lineup predictions. I'll start with yourself, John. This is going to be, hopefully, when we wrap it up, what do you go with, line up in your score?
Yeah, I think you have to go heart and goal. Like you said, we always say the back four picks itself as well. I don't know the situation with Juranovic. I'm assuming he's probably still injured, so I'm going to say Ralston, CCV, Starfelt, Taylor. Then again, I do you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if we maybe gave some guys a rest. But I think that we'll probably go with the strongest team we've got. So I'll say Kalmak, I'll say Rogic, I'll say Hatate, and then I'll go Maeda, Giakoumakis, and Jota.
And your score?
3-0.
3-0. Nice one. What about yourself, Dominic? What are you going with?
Okay, back four, exactly the same. Midfield, Hatate's weird because Hatate's obviously knackered.
He's
needs a rest, but he's kept on bringing him in, and that's the one thing that you obviously, there is the thing. Obviously, the manager knows better than us what people are doing at training, and obviously, Ange knows Hatate better than any of us. So, I'd like to see him get a rest, but I don't think he will. I think it'll be Kalmak and Hatate. I'd pick Matt O'Reilly over Rogic, just because I think Rogic is better coming off the bench now. And up front, so you'd put Giakoumakis instead of Kyogo up front, John. Yeah,
I picked Giakoumakis instead of Kyogo to start.
Yeah. It's interesting because Kyogo needs the minutes in his legs, but at this point in the season, is it worth it? Giakoumakis has been it's like having a big John Hartson or a Chris Sutton up front for us again.
Oh, that's
brilliant. And you love that kind of player, especially with a ball.
He's a tank as well. He's
he is. No. So absolutely Maeda. Again, I'd put Maeda on the left. Just to be different, I'll put Kyogo in there because he needs 3 goals to get to the 20 goals of the season as well. Yeah. Kyogo, which he would deserve, and he would have absolutely bust. So I'll put Kyogo in the middle, and I'll put Abada out to the right. I'm resting Jota, haven't I? Why am I resting Jota? Actually, do you know?
Catch yourself on.
Do you know why I'm resting Jota? Because I put a couple of tweets about this, and I'm not kidding. His hair wasn't as good in the last. It wasn't quite under control, and I worried that before he got that goal, he'd missed the chance. And I'm like, I think he felt like he'd been made to go out into the pitch 5 minutes before he was finished with his hair, and it took him a wee bit to get into the game. Then he was great. So I would say, maybe it's a game time decision. If you're in the dressing room, Jota, and if he's like, no, I need another 10 minutes, then all right, don't you worry, we'll put you on the bench and we'll put Maeda, and we'll put Abada out instead.
And your score, Dominic?
You know what? They beat us in that first game of the season. And that's when people started to laugh at Ange. And I think as a result, that because we didn't get the win last weekend, I think those players and that manager are going to be so fired up. If we get an early goal, see what James had just put there, 4-0, I can see that. I'll go 3-0 because I'm a little bit more conservative. But if we score first, 3, 4, 5. Let's say 3-0. They'll be so fired up.
I want to be party time. I think you make a great point. There'll be a bit of revenge mission there to kind of right that wrong of the start of the season. I myself, I'll go Hart, Ralston, Starfelt, CCV, Taylor. I'll go Beaton, Kalmak, and O'Reilly. Give Hatate the wee break. And then I'll go Jota, Giakoumakis, and Maeda. And I'll go 3-0 as well. And you did mention Jota's hair. Maybe it was Ralston just going...
See, my worry about your lineup though, Stephen, is again, Beaton's another guy who has been, I would have had him out the club like months ago. Yeah. But then he's had those times where he's come on and really shored things up. But starting it, you've just got that Beaton red card is always just waiting there to happen. And it's just like, oh no, because what I can see, Beaton's maybe the last guy you want to start if everyone's fired up, because you'll get that yellow within 5 minutes, and then it's like, oh no, then you'll get the red, we'll be down to 10, we'll lose it, they'll win, then it will come down to that last day, and Hearts will ship 18 goals.
I'd say before we wrap up the podcast, someone brought it in the comments earlier, I can't remember who, so forgive me if you hear it being brought up, just say your name again and I'll mention you. But someone mentioned, John, that this pre-season now, because we're going to miss that kind of early qualifiers and all that, the early friendlies, literally 2 weeks off, you're straight back in. It's a perfect chance to rest the Japanese players who played a full season, get the squad back together. Ranovic coming back from injury, and hopefully Julian recovering more and getting more involved with the first team. I think it'll be greatly beneficial, won't it?
No, absolutely. Of course. I mean, they all need a break, to be honest, because they've been busting their ass all season. And how the Japanese boys have managed to come in after a full year in Japan, and then do another half season here at the pace. The Scottish game as well is incredible. And I don't know, Maeda's no human. I'm sure he's probably some sort of android of some sort, because there's no way a human should be able to do what he's doing. No. It's absolutely mental.
Yeah.
But they all need a
what about
rest.
Yeah, they do. What about yourself, Dominic? It is vital for this pre-season, I think.
Yeah, it is. There's two ways. I mean, what those qualifiers do is it's a good chance to see what people are going to be like under pressure, which you're not going to get that. But that said, it's still don't get me wrong, I'd still rather go straight into the Champions League and get that money. Julian's interesting. What is the deal? I mean,
nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Julian was our best centre back, right? Then he gets that, like, I mean, never in a million times would that injury happen again. Injured by the goalpost, and then he comes back and he's on the bench, and then he gets on for a bit, and then he's not even on the bench for a couple of games. And again, you think there's something's happening there. Listen, Stephen Welsh's attitude is phenomenal. He's another one of these players. I wish him to do great. He's about 6 inches too small. That's the only thing. But why Julian has not been getting 30 minutes every game, I don't know. So
I think sorry, Dominic. I think it comes down to, like you said, he had that freak injury, and I mean, at the time when it happened, and obviously he banged his knee, but it didn't look as bad as it did. But apparently he crushed that, whatever it's called, the capella or whatever. I don't know what you call it.
Patella,
like completely smashed it. He's obviously been out for a lengthy time, and he's just coming back from injury. He's got a wee run out in his legs, but I think at this stage of the season, you've got a great pairing in CCV and Starfelt, and shaking that up might be costly. Obviously, you want, because it's been so close, the running this year, coming at the end of this season, you don't want to upset that sort of chemistry that you've built between the two at the minute. I think if we wrap it up against Hearts, then, like you mentioned, a good opportunity for then Julian in the last 2 games to get a wee run out, and I'm sure he'll be working just as hard during the sort of post-season, pre-season, to get himself up to scratch, and then Ange will try him out in some friendlies and see how he gels with, hopefully, a CCV in that, to see how he fits in. I still think he's got a role to play. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong, and he still seems in good spirits. If we check his Instagram or whatever it is, and he loves the club. He wants to try. He wants to be here. He wants to work for it. I think it's just a matter of circumstance rather than anything else.
Yeah, it's a strange one, Dominic, because as you said, he was our best centre back. He scored some vital goals in Europe, the Lazio goal, the League Cup goal against Rangers to win that one when we were under the cosh for most of the game. And then he gets that injury. He's back on their hands, and apart from, was it Alloa? Was it Alloa he played against, or was it Rafe or something like that?
Yeah.
Something like that. He got 30 minutes. He didn't look that good, to be honest. But obviously, it's been a match fitness there. And I do agree, maybe if we wrap it up tomorrow, you could get like a game, at least a game, towards the end of the season if he's fit enough. But it kind of brings us to the end of the podcast. Now, I was going to do a quiz, right? But I'm not going to do it no more because John has bad form with him. I'm interested with you, Dominic, right? And I'm interested with you, Dominic, in terms of your Celtic memories. Now, I do this with my guests in terms of like the footballers I have on, and sometimes it's interesting what to say. What would be your dream five-a-side that you've seen play for Celtic?
Am I playing with them? Because if I'm playing with them,
you're picking.
Right. Because if I'm playing,
you're
with
the
them,
manager.
Okay. It was just, if I'm playing with them, Hartson would be the first pick because he's the only one I could keep up with. Well, yeah. I mean, you'd have to have Lubo, for a start. You'd have to have Henrik up front because I'd named my son after him. Do you know what's interesting? So my son is Charlie Henrik Larsson. I'm sorry, Charlie Henrik Diamond. I wish he was Charlie Henrik Larsson, but he's not remotely interested in football, right? Which has broken my heart because he's grown up as a Canadian, for 30 years. But recently, because again, 17-year-old, teenage boys, they're a bit mental, aren't they? So he came down a couple of weeks and said, "You know what? I want to be known by my middle name now." And I'm like, "What?" And he's changed like his Xbox signings to Henrik now. And I'm like, oh my God, that's absolutely brilliant. So we definitely have Henrik. I would have Joe Hart in goal. No, holy goalie in goal.
I was going to say there, Dominic.
Because hopefully, at one point, if we play a certain team from the other side of Glasgow, I'd like to see him cross himself at the start of the game. At the back, I'd have Danny McGrain because I love the guy absolutely so much. He's just one of the loveliest guys ever. And so five. When you say five, do you mean 5 outfield and 1 goalie, or like 5 in total?
5 in total.
Ivan Toll. Okay, yep. So Tom Boyd, right? Great player, but just I'm in stitches every single game on Celtic TV with his pure,
Jesus.
unbridled, like not give a shit favoritism for. I mean, some of the stuff he calls is brilliant, and I can just when Tom's angry, he's angry. When he's happy, and I love him as well. So yeah, we'd have Tom and Danny McGrain at the back. We'd have Lubo sitting just behind Henrik, and we'd have Joe Hart at the back. Holy goalie at the back. So
I think it's Joe Hart. It's Joe Hart. You want Joe Hart in there?
Do you know what? I'll tell you what's good about Joe Hart, right? Is that I saw Joe Hart when I was in Toronto, and Toronto FC played a preseason friendly against Man City, and seeing Man City train doing like the one-touch games was unreal. But Joe Hart, for about 30 minutes at the end, stood at the edge of the penalty area, and someone fired in crosses, and he volleyed them into the net, and he must have got 40 in a row as a striker. Unbelievable. He was absolutely unbelievable.
I think Joe's calling you out here. Dominik used to have the dreads.
I used to have dreads. I had a ponytail at some point, and I think the way I combed it looked like I had dreads. But yeah, about 2 years ago, I had my last ever attempt to grow my hair long, and I think it's because I didn't cut it for a while, and then I kind of combed it back, and someone go, "Oh, you look a bit like Jack Nicholson." I'm like, "Okay, I like that," and then I grew it longer and longer, but it seemed the longer it went, the further it slipped back. So I looked like the brother who gets killed in Godfather 2. I look like Fredo. So that's it. I shaved it all back. So now it's just whatever the hell you call that now. Holy jeez.
And just as you did in the other show, Ryan, I'll bring it up to the end again. You're starting something new. You've done some fantastic work with the Game Master, radio personality. You've done work with the Guardian. And just remind them of their new venture again.
Sure. It's a wee video games thing to try and make sense of modern games for us people who have grown up a little bit and find it all a bit scary. And it's called Dominik's Little Old Purple Column, and it's out on the Substack platform every week, every Thursday, 6:30 p.m, same time as Games Master used to be on. And it's written, and it's also me reading it out as well. And if you want any details of that, just go to my Twitter at Dominik Diamond.
Perfect. And obviously we'll include all the links and stuff, and we'll post it and that, so it'll be great. And just to, again, come to yourself, we appreciate you coming on. Have you enjoyed your time with us?
Oh yes, very much so. No, it's absolutely great. It's funny because I think that I've done a couple of Celtic podcasts that are on Friday night over there, and it always seems to be the best. It's a good time, And also, what's good, it means that now, see, I can go and have a beer now, and it's only 2:10, but I can say to my wife, "Oh, come on, it's middle of the night over there now," so that's okay. I can start my weekend now.
I mean, Alistair thought I was on the cans. I'm on the Fanta, Alistair, so just to clarify that.
I thought that was attendance as well.
No chance. Fanta. And apparently that's being discontinued. I don't know, but apparently it is.
Is that because they've complained about the word orange? Can you not use that anymore either?
Probably. And yourself, John, have you enjoyed this one?
No one likes us. We don't care. Don't call us orange.
Yeah, man, as always, as I say, Friday night's not usually a night I get on because I'm usually busy, but it's good to get on a Friday.
Yeah, brilliant. And again, to everyone watching on, we'll be back again Tuesday, hopefully in party mode after we've wrapped up the league title against the Jambos tomorrow. And in the meantime, from all of us, and thanks again to Dominik for coming on, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail, what a hoops.